Hello and welcome to Jay's Way. Thank you so much for coming and watching this video. If this is a topic that you feel could benefit someone, please share the video with them. Like and subscribe. Let's get this message out there to anybody that can learn from it. But today, I want to talk about a subject called gaslighting. Gaslighting is a fairly newish term. It's a tool that's used within manipulation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion with this term as people begin to understand what it means. And a lot of times they'll take their misunderstandings of it and start to accuse people of gaslighting them, when in fact they're not. And I'd like to combat that today by talking first, very briefly, I'm just going to define what gaslighting is, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that gaslighting is not. So let's talk more about what it isn't to help people understand what it is. First off, this very philosophy and this very term came from a movie that came out in 1944 called Gaslight. In this movie, there's a married couple. The man is married to the woman for the sole purpose of trying to obtain something that she has. And he uses manipulation techniques throughout the whole movie to try to change her perception of her own reality, and essentially she ends up going crazy. And that's one of the techniques that he uses, is messing with the lights, where when you turn one light on a gas lamp, the other gas lamps connected to it will dim or brighten based off of how much gas they have. And that's just a technique that he uses in the movie, and that's where the term came from. The definition of gaslighting, from Robin Stern, Dr. Robin Stern, is gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse where one person's psychological manipulation causes another person to question their reality. So, manipulation is one thing. Gaslighting is a way of manipulating somebody, but the purpose behind that manipulation is to try to convince them that what's real is not real. So you're trying to make them believe that their reality is wrong. That's what it is. Now, here's a couple of things that commonly get misconstrued because they are not gaslighting. One of them is disagreement. When you have a disagreement with somebody, it does not mean that you are being gaslighted. There's always going to be people that believe differently than you are. And just because they believe differently than you are, and they vocalize that disagreement to you, it doesn't mean that you are being abused. Because gaslighting is a form of abuse. People disagree, and that's normal. Opinions are also not gaslighting. When someone has a difference of opinion, that is normal and acceptable. You cannot look at that person and say they're gaslighting you, because they're not. Expressing a different opinion than what you believe is not gaslighting. And when the expression of those opinions becomes a disagreement, again, it is not gaslighting. Another thing, anger. Anger is not gaslighting. I could have a difference of opinion that leads to a disagreement, and then it leads to anger. This is a fight. This is an argument. It doesn't mean that I'm manipulating you, or that you are manipulating someone. It is what it has always been. A disagreement, an argument, a difference of opinion. Those things are not gaslighting. Another thing that I found pretty darn interesting was the philosophy behind lying. Lying is, of course, lying, and that's bad. But it's not gaslighting. Unless you are lying and lying and lying to the point of convincing someone else that your lie is the truth. This is because gaslighting is chronic. It is not something that can happen one and done. This is something that happens slowly over time when someone breaks down your reality and replaces it with their own influence. Okay? I can say something that would be considered gaslighting, but I'm not gaslighting you, because that's the end of it. I'm not going to make any other attempt whatsoever to pursue the topic or try to convince you of what I'm saying. So even though I might be pushing those boundaries, it's not gaslighting. Because an individual who's gaslighting has to be subconsciously or consciously attempting to push you into a new real. That's what it is. And that's what it is not. This is really important because gaslighting is a form of abuse, and I want people to be able to know when it's happening to them. And in order to recognize that, you need to understand what it is. When someone is trying to push you over and over again into a new reality, a new real, that's gaslighting. And you have to recognize it and stop it and not allow that to happen to you. And at the same time, that abuse and the philosophy of gaslighting will completely lose its power if we're unable to be truthful and call it what it is. When we go and say that someone is hurting us in a certain way, and they're not, we lose credibility. That way of hurting someone loses credibility. And then it becomes something that loses its power and influence. And I want people that gaslight, I want people to know when that's happening. So in order for that to be recognized, we need to recognize that a fight, an argument, a difference of opinion, a debate, these are all perfectly normal traits that are not gaslighting. We all are different, and there's always going to be people that believe differently than we do, sometimes passionately, and we have that right. You have the right to believe differently than me passionately, and you have the right to talk about that, just as I do. And we should not be told that we're being abusive in the form of gaslighting when we do so. We have every right to express our opinions, even if they're different than someone else's. You have that right, I have that right, everyone has that right. I want you to know, with all of my heart, that peace, love, and joy is what is wanted for you. And that's Jay's way.